Hey, 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 Laura J here today with The Artist's Way. This chapter is on recovering a sense of power, and I very much hope it inspires you to work through some of the emotions that are rising up in you to be faced. I do also offer the realization that I have come to in the past few weeks and months that each of our emotions have personalities of their own. In Fully Committed, The Sacred Sojourn of Now, which is the book that took 5 years for me to write in a month, I share the high rise of emotional awareness, which is a theory that uses Abraham, the consciousness channeled by Esther Hicks's emotional guidance system, applied to an apartment building with the same address, but a completely different experience top to bottom. What I have come to realize is that each of our emotions actually have a different personality within that high rise, and contentment is the bottom of being present in the upward spiral of being instead of emotions, which are energies in motion that need to move, that start at boredom downward. So states of being present compared to states of emotion or energy in motion that require us to move our focus to a not now moment, that we didn't deal with that which is showing up now to be dealt with, is how we really call ourselves to be present, content where we are, and then we can really start to don the crown of our own contentment. And that leads us into higher level states of being present, where joy exists as the experience that starts and ends the journey and leaves an urn in between, which is a ballot box when you add the E, is the vessel that the cremated body goes into without the E. And then spelt a different way, because words are spell casting, ultimately is what we have come to believe we need to do in order to play at a higher level in this world, which is earn our way with an EARN. So these are just different plays on words, but it's all part of the play that we're part of, and our energies in motion ultimately are part of it, because what we haven't dealt with and we have denied, denial being didn't even know I am lying, that will show up with a vengeance, because we get hit with the momentums of all of the energies in motion that are trying to move in the now, which is the only moment that we have where all of our power exists. So I hope this sets up the experience of listening to the chapter on recovering an inner sense of power, which breathing is a very useful tool as well. As you can tell, I'm in a slightly faster pace experience. And when that is the case, I want you to be also conscious of how it affects your nervous system when someone else is moving faster, because oftentimes it will send your nervous system into a fight or flight experience or the shutdown experience. So, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, fornicate are all ways that our nervous system takes us into a not now experience of being in the energy in motion that we're trying to freeze, when what we really need to do is be present with ourselves. And self acceptance is a huge part of that. So, the art of surrendering fully is something we all would be well served to learn. And I hope this really sets you up for an enjoyable chapter. If you want to take a moment to reflect on what has been shared, I highly encourage you to pause this message so that you can. And then I am going to play the video from the Sacred Self Compassion Services from last year while I move in my room here. And then I will be sharing this video to my YouTube channel after. And the heartwave frequency, the triad wave, is actually going to be playing underneath, because that's what I did last year. And that means that it will be more difficult for me to edit out parts that I do not believe serve you in receiving the message now, but did at the time. And so we do the best that we can with what we've got. If you remove any part of the triad wave, it breaks up the line or the frequency, and we are living in a universe of frequency. So I don't quite know how it's going to turn out in the end, but I'm going to just do some moving. I would encourage you to as well, because ultimately, the vessel that transports our body through this world is ultimately in need of movement. So I hope that you will give yourself that gift as I am giving myself now as well. It is Saturday, July 23rd, and I am going to now just do what feels fun and encourage you to too. Don't try to follow along specifically, because I don't have a plan with what I am doing or how I am moving. And I encourage you to give the artist within you that same creative flexibility too. Enjoy. So, here we go. This week may find you dealing with unaccustomed bursts of energy and sharp peaks of anger, joy, and grief. You are coming into your power as the illusory hold of your previously accepted limitations is shaken. You will be asked to consciously experiment with spiritual open-mindedness. So anger is where we begin. Anger is fuel. We feel it and we want to do something. Hit someone, break something, throw a fit, smash a fist into the wall, tell those bastards. But we are nice people, and what we do with our anger is stuff it, deny it, bury it, block it, hide it, lie about it, medicate it, muffle it, ignore it. We do everything but listen to it. Anger is meant to be listened to. Anger is a voice, a shout, a plea, a demand. Anger is meant to be respected. Why? Because anger is a map. Anger shows us what our boundaries are. Anger shows us where we want to go. It lets us see where we've been and lets us know when we haven't liked it. Anger points the way, not just the finger. In the recovery of a blocked artist, anger is a sign of health. Anger is meant to be acted upon. It is not meant to be acted out. Anger points the direction. We are meant to use anger as fuel to take the actions we need to move where our anger points us. With a little thought, we can usually translate the message that our anger is sending us. If only we will listen. Blast him, I could make a better film than that, this anger says. You want to make movies, you need to learn how. I can't believe it. I had this idea for a play 3 years ago and she's gone and written it. This anger says, stop procrastinating. Ideas don't get opening nights. Finished plays do. Start writing. That's my strategy he's using. This is incredible. I've been ripped off. I knew I should have pulled that material together and copyrighted it. This anger says, it's time to take your own ideas seriously enough to treat them well. When we feel anger, we are often very angry that we feel anger. Damn anger. It tells us we can't get away with our old life any longer. It tells us that old life is dying. It tells us we are being reborn and birthing hurts. The hurt makes us angry. Anger is the firestorm that signals the death of our old life. Anger is the fuel that propels us into our new one. Anger is a tool, not a master. Anger is meant to be tapped into and drawn upon, used properly. Anger is useful. Sloth, apathy, and despair are the enemy. Anger is not. Anger is our friend. Not a nice friend, not a gentle friend, but a very, very loyal friend. It will always tell us when we have been betrayed. It will always tell us when we have betrayed ourselves. It will always tell us that it is time to act in our own best interests. Anger is not the action itself. It is action's invitation. Synchronicity. Answered prayers are scary. They imply responsibility. You asked for it. Now that you've got it, what are you going to do? Why else the cautionary phrase, watch out for what you pray for, you just might get it. Answered prayers deliver us back to our own hand. This is not comfortable. We find it easier to accept them as examples of synchronicity. A woman admits to a very dream of acting. At dinner the next night, she sits beside a man who teaches beginning actors. A writer acknowledges a dream to go to film school. A single exploratory phone call puts him in touch with the professor who knows and admires his work and promises him that the last available slot is now his. A woman is thinking about going back to school and opens her mail to find a letter requesting her application from the very school she was thinking about going to. A woman wonders how to rent a rare film she has never seen. She finds it at her neighborhood bookstore 2 days later. A businessman who has secretly written for years vows to himself to ask a professional writer for a prognosis on his talent. The next night, over a pool table, he meets a writer who becomes his mentor and then collaborator on several successful books. It's my experience that we're much more afraid that there might be a God than we are that there might not be. Incidents like those above happen to us, and yet we dismiss them as sheer coincidence. People talk about how dreadful it would be if there were no God. I think such talk is hooey. Most of us are a lot more comfortable feeling we're not being watched too closely. If God, by which I do not necessarily mean a single-pointed Christian concept, but an all-powerful and all-knowing force, does not exist, well then, we're all off the hook, aren't we? There's no divine retribution, no divine consolation, and if the whole experience stinks, well, what did you expect? The question of expectations interests me. If there is no God, or if that God is disinterested in our puny little affairs, then everything can roll along as always.
We can feel quite justified in declaring certain things impossible, other things unfair. If God or the lack of God is responsible for the state of the world, then we can easily wax cynical and resign ourselves to apathy. What's the use? Why try changing anything?
If this is the use, if this is the use, if there is a responsive creative force that does hear us and act on our behalf, then we may really be able to do some things. The jig, in short, is up. God knows that the sky's the limit. Anyone honest will tell you the possibility is far more frightening than impossibility, that freedom is far more terrifying than any prison. If we do, in fact, have to deal with a force beyond ourselves that involves itself in our lives, then we may have to move into action on those previously impossible dreams. Life is what we make of it. Whether we conceive of an inner God force or an other outer God doesn't matter. Relying on that force does. Ask and you shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened to you. These words are among the more unpleasant ones ascribed to Jesus Christ. They suggest the possibility of scientific method. Ask, experiment, and see what happens. Record the results. Is it any wonder we discounted answered prayers? We call it coincidence. We call it luck. We call it anything but what it is, the hand of God, or good, activated by our own hand when we act in behalf of our truest dreams, when we commit to our own soul. Even the most timid life contains such moments of commitment. I will get a new love seat after all. And then I found the perfect one. It was the strangest thing. I was at Aunt Bernice's and her neighbor was having a garage sale and she had this wonderful love seat her new husband was allergic to. In our outsized lives, such moments stand as in base relief, large as Mount Rushmore. Lewis and Clark headed west. Isaac Dinson took off for Africa. We all have our Africas, those dark and romantic notions that call to our deepest selves. When we answer that call, when we commit to it, we set in motion the principle that C.G. Jung dubbed synchronicity, loosely defined as a fortuitous intermeshing of events. Back in the 60s, we called it serendipity. Whatever you choose to call it, once you begin your creative recovery, you may be startled to find it cropping up everywhere. Don't be surprised if you try to discount it. It can be a very threatening concept. Although Jung's paper on synchronicity was a cornerstone of his thought, even many Jungians prefer to believe it was a sort of side issue. They'll dismiss it, like his interest in the I Ching, or as an oddity, nothing to take too seriously. Jung might differ from them. Following his own inner leadings brought him to experience and describe a phenomenon that some of us prefer to ignore, the possibility of an intelligent and responsive universe acting and reacting in our interests. It is my experience that this is the case. I have learned as a rule of thumb never to ask whether you can do something. Say instead that you are doing it. Then fasten your seatbelt. The most remarkable things often follow. God is efficient, the actress Julia McCarthy always reminds me. I have many times marveled at the sleight of hand with which the universe delivers its treats. About 6 years ago, a play of mine was chosen for a large staged reading at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. I had written the play with my friend Juliana in mind for the lead. She was my ideal casting, but when I arrived in Denver, casting was already set. As soon as I met my leading lady, I had a funny feeling there was a ticking time bomb. I had a funny feeling there was a bomb ticking. I mentioned this to the director, but was assured the actress was a consummate professional. Still, the funny feeling lingered in my stomach. Sure enough, a week before we were set to open, our leading lady abruptly resigned from my play and from Painting Churches, the play that was in mid run. The Denver Center was stunned and very apologetic. They felt terrible about the damage my play would sustain by the abrupt departure. In a perfect world, who would you cast? They asked me. I told them Juliana McCarthy. Juliana was hired and flown in from Los Angeles. No sooner did the center's directors lay eyes on her work that they asked her not only to do my play, but to also take over the run of Painting Churches, for which she was brilliantly cast. God is showing off, I laughed to Juliana, very happy that she had the chance to do her play after all. In my experience, the universe falls in with worthy plans, and most especially with festive and expansive ones. I have seldom conceived a delicious plan without being given the means to accomplish it. Understand that the what must come before the how. First choose what you would do. The how usually falls into place of itself. All too often, when people talk about creative work, they emphasize strategy. Neophytes are advised of the Machiavellian devices we must employ to break into the field. I think this is a lot of rubbish. If you ask an artist how he got where he is, he will not describe breaking in, but instead will talk of a series of lucky breaks. 1,000 unseen helping hands, Joseph Campbell calls these breaks. I call them synchronicity. It is my contention that you can count on them. Remember that creativity is a tribal experience and that tribal elders will initiate the gifted youngsters who cross their path. This may sound like wishful thinking, but it is not. Sometimes an older artist will be moved to help out, even against his or her own wishes. I don't know why I'm saying this for you, but again, I would say that some of the helping hands may be something more than human. We like to pretend it's hard to follow our heartstrings. The truth is, it's difficult to avoid walking through the many doors that will open. Turn aside your dream, and it will come back to you again. Get willing to follow it again, and a second mysterious door will swing open. The universe is prodigal. The universe is prodigal in its support. We are miserably in what we accept. All gift horses are looked at in the mouth. All gift horses are looked in the mouth and usually returned to sender. We say we are scared by failure, but what frightens us more is the possibility of success. Take a small step in the direction of a dream and watch the synchronous doors flying open. Seeing, after all, is believing, and if you see the results of your experiments, you will not need to believe me. Remember the maxim, leap and the net will appear? In his book, The Scottish Himalayan Expedition, W.H. Murray tells us his explorer's experience. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative or creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans.
That the moment one definitely commits oneself,
then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would otherwise never have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man would have believed would have come his way. If you do not trust Murray or me, you might want to trust Goethe. Statesman, scholar, artist, man of the world, Goethe had this to say on the will of Providence assisting our efforts. Whatever you think you can do or believe you can do, begin it. Action has magic, grace, and power in it. Genuine beginnings begin within us, even when they are brought to our attention by external opportunities. William Bridges. Desire, ask, believe, receive. Stella Tyrrell Mann. Chance is always powerful. Let your hook be always cast in the pool where you least expect it. There will be a fish. Ovid. Did you ever observe to whom the accidents happen? Chance favors only the prepared mind. Louis Pasteur. I merely took the energy it takes to pout and wrote some blues. Duke Ellington. When a man takes one step toward God, God takes more steps toward that man than there are sands in the worlds of time. The work of the chariot. The universe will reward you for taking risks on its behalf. Shakti Gawain. These I know to be true. Shame. Some of you are thinking, if it were that easy to take action, I wouldn't be reading this book. Those of us who get bogged down by fear before action are usually being sabotaged by an older enemy, shame. Shame is a controlling device. Shaming someone is an attempt to prevent the person from behaving in a way that embarrasses us. Making a piece of art may feel a lot like telling a family secret. Secret telling, by its very nature, involves shame and fear. It asks the question, what will they think of me once they know this? This is a frightening question, particularly if we have ever been made to feel ashamed for our curiosities and explorations, social, sexual, spiritual. How dare you, angry adults often rage at an innocent child who has stumbled onto a family secret? How dare you open your mother's jewelry box? How dare you open your father's desk drawer? How dare you open the bathroom door? How dare you go down in the cellar up to the attic, into some dark place where we hide those things we don't want you to know about? The act of making art exposes a society to itself. Art brings things to light. It illuminates us. It sheds light on our lingering darkness. It casts a beam into the heart of our own darkness and says, see. When people do not want to see something, they get mad at the one who shows them. They kill the messenger. A child from an alcoholic home gets into trouble scholastically or sexually. The family is flagged as being troubled. The child is made to feel shame for bringing shame to the family, but did the child bring shame? No. The child brought shameful things to light. The family's shame predated and caused the child's distress. What will the neighbors think is a shaming device aimed at continuing a conspiracy of illness? Art opens the closets, airs out the cellars and the attics. It brings healing, but before a wound can heal, it must be seen. And this act of exposing the wound to air and light, the artist act, is often reacted to with shaming. Bad reviews are a prime source of shame for many artists. The truth is, many reviews do aim at creating shame in an artist. Shame on you. How dare you make that rotten piece of art? How dare we not? For the artist who endured childhood shaming over any form of neediness, any type of exploration, any expectation, shame may kick in even without the aid of a shame-provoking review. If a child has ever been made to feel foolish for believing himself or herself talented, the act of actually finishing
A piece of art will be fraught with internal shaming.
Many artists begin a piece of work, get well along in it, and then find, as they near completion, that the work seems mysteriously drained of merit. It's no longer worth the trouble. To therapists, the surge of sudden disinterest, it doesn't matter, is a
Routine coping mechanism employed to deny pain and ward off vulnerability.
Adults who grew up in dysfunctional homes learn to use this coping mechanism very well. They call it detachment, but it is actually a numbing out. He forgot my birthday. Oh well, no big deal. A lifetime of this kind of experience, in which needs for recognition are routinely dishonored, teaches a young child that putting anything out for attention is a dangerous act. Dragging home the invisible bone is how one recovering artist characterized her vain search for an achievement big enough to gain approval in her family of origin. No matter how big a deal it was, they never seemed to take much notice. They always found something wrong with it. All A's and one B, and the B got the attention. It's only natural that a young artist try to flag parental attention by way of accomplishments, positive or negative. Faced with indifference or rage, such youngsters soon learn that no bone would really meet with parental approval. Often we are wrongly shamed as creatives. From this shaming, we learn that we are wrong to create. Once we learn this lesson, we forget it instantly. Buried under it doesn't matter. The shame lives on, waiting to attach itself to our new efforts. The very act of attempting to make art creates shame. This is why many a great student film is never sent off to festivals where it can be seen, why good novels are destroyed or live in desk drawers. This is why plays do not get sent out, why talented actors don't audition. This is why artists may feel shame at admitting their dreams. Shame is retriggering in us as adults because our internal artist is always our creative child. Because of this, making a piece of art may cause us to feel shame. We don't make art with its eventual criticism foremost in mind, but criticism that asks a question like, how could you, can make an artist feel like a shamed child. A well meaning friend who constructively criticizes a beginning writer may very well end that writer. Let me be clear, not all criticism is shaming. In fact, even the most severe criticism, when it fairly hits the mark, is apt to be greeted with an internal aha. It shows the artist a new and valid path for work. The criticism that damages is that which disparages, dismisses, ridicules, or condemns. It is frequently vicious but vague and difficult to refute. This is the criticism that damages. Shamed by such criticism, an artist may become blocked or stop sending work out into the world. A perfectionist friend, teacher, or critic, like a perfectionist parent who nitpicks at missing commas, can dampen the ardor of a young artist who is just learning to let it rip. Because of this, as artists, we must learn to be very self-protective. Does this mean no criticism? No. It means learning where and when to seek out right criticism. As artists, we must learn when criticism is appropriate and from whom. Not only the source, but the timing is very important here. A first draft is seldom appropriately shown to any but the most gentle and discerning eye. It often takes another artist to see the embryonic work that is trying to sprout. The inexperienced or harsh critical eye, instead of nurturing the shoot of art into being, may shoot it down instead. As artists, we cannot control all the criticism we will receive. We cannot make our professional critics more healthy or more loving or more constructive than they are. But we can learn to comfort our artist child over unfair criticism. We can learn to find friends with whom we can safely vent our pain. We can learn not to deny and stuff our feelings when we have been artistically savaged. Art requires a safe hatchery. Ideally, artists find this first in their family, then in their school, and finally in a community of friends and supporters. This ideal is seldom a reality. As artists, we must learn to create our own safe environments. We must learn to protect our artist child from shame. We do this by diffusing our childhood shamings, getting them on the page, and sharing them with a trusted, non-shaming other. We must learn that when our art reveals a secret of the human soul, those watching it may try to shame us for making it. It's terrible, they may say, attacking the work when the work itself is actually fine. That this can be very confusing. When we are told shame on you and feel it, we must learn to recognize the shame as a recreation of childhood shames. I know that work is good. I thought that was good work. Could I be kidding myself? Maybe that critic is right. Why did I ever have the nerve to think? And the downward spiral begins. At these times, we must be very firm with ourselves and not pick up the first doubt. We simply cannot allow the first negative thinking to take hold. Taking in the first doubt is like picking up the first drink for an alcoholic. Once in our system, the doubt will take on another doubt and another. Doubting thoughts can be stopped, but it takes vigilance to do it. Maybe that critic was right, and boom, we must go into action. You are a good artist, a brave artist. You are doing well. It's good that you did that work. When God's Will, the romantic film comedy I directed, debuted in Washington, D.C., it was a homecoming for me. My earliest journalism work had been for the Washington Post. I was hoping for a hometown girl makes good reception, but in the reviews printed prior to the opening, I did not get it. The Post sent a young woman who watched an entire movie about theater people and then wrote that it was about movie people. She added that most of my dialogue had been stolen from Casablanca. I wondered what movie she had seen, not the one I made. My movie had 40-odd theater jokes and a one-line joke about Casablanca. Those were the facts, but they didn't do me any good. I was mortified, shamed, ready to almost die. Because the antidote for shame is self love and self praise. This is what I did. I went for a walk through Rock Creek Park. I prayed. I made a list for myself of past compliments and good reviews. I did not tell myself it doesn't matter, but I did tell my artist self, you will heal. And I showed up for my opening. It was a lot more successful than my reviews. 3 months later, my film was chosen for a prestigious European festival. They offered to fly me over, to pay my expenses, to showcase my film. I hesitated. The Washington shaming had done its slow and poisonous work. I was afraid to go, but I knew better than to not go. My years in artistic recovery had taught me to just show up. When I did, my film sold at a great price and won a headline in Variety. I share the headline because the irony of it was not lost on me. God's will hit in Munich. It read, "It is God's will for us to be creative. Since you are like no other being ever created since the beginning of time, you are incomparable." Brenda Euland. I have made my world, and it is a much better world than I ever saw outside. Louise Nevelson. Dealing with criticism. It is important to be able to sort useful criticism from the other kind. Often we need to do the sorting out for ourselves without the benefit of a public vindication. As artists, we are far more able to do this sorting than people might suspect. Pointed criticism, if accurate, often gives the artist an inner sense of relief. Aha! So that's what was wrong with it. Useful criticism ultimately leaves us with one more puzzle piece for our work. Useless criticism, on the other hand, leaves us with the feeling of being bludgeoned. As a rule, it is withering and shaming in tone, ambiguous in content, personal, inaccurate, or blanket in its condemnations. There is nothing to be gleaned from irresponsible criticism. You are dealing with an inner child. Artistic child abuse creates rebellion, creates blocks. All that can be done with abusive criticism is to heal from it. There are certain rules of the road useful in dealing with any form of criticism. 1. Receive the criticism all the way through and get it over with. 2. Jot down notes to yourself on what concepts or phrases bother you. 3. Jot down notes on what concepts or phrases seem useful. 4. Do something very nurturing for yourself. Read a good old review or recall a compliment. 5. Remember that even if you have made a truly rotten piece of art, it may be a necessary stepping stone to your next work. Art matures spasmodically and requires ugly duckling growth stages. 6. Look at the criticism again. Does it remind you of any criticism from your past, particularly shame and childhood criticism? Acknowledge to yourself that the current criticism is triggering grief over a long-standing wound. 7. Write a letter to the critic, not to be mailed, most probably. Defend your work and acknowledge what was helpful, if anything, in the criticism offered. 8. Get back on the horse. Make an immediate commitment to do something creative. 9. Do it. Creativity is the only cure for criticism. Detective work and exercise. Many blocked people are actually very powerful and creative personalities who have been made to feel guilty about their own strengths and gifts. Without being acknowledged, they are often used as batteries by their families and friends, who feel free to both use their creative energies and disparage them. When these blocked artists strive to break free of their dysfunctional systems, they are often urged to be sensible when such advice is not appropriate for them. Made to feel guilty for their talents, they often hide their own light under a bushel for fear of hurting others. Instead, they hurt themselves. A little sleuth work is in order to restore the persons we have abandoned, ourselves. When you complete the following phrases, you may feel strong emotion as you retrieve memories and misplaced fragments of yourself. Allow yourself to free associate for a sentence or so with each phrase. Number 1, so play with this and finish it off for yourself the way that feels most resonant for you. My favorite childhood toy was. My favorite childhood game was. The best movie I ever saw as a kid was. I don't do it much, but I enjoy. If I could lighten up a little, I'd let myself. If it weren't too late, I'd. My favorite musical instrument is the amount of money I spend on treating myself to entertainment each month is if I weren't so stingy with my artist, I'd buy him or her. Taking time out for myself is I am afraid that if I started dreaming, I secretly enjoy reading. If I had had a perfect childhood, I would have grown up to be. If it didn't sound so crazy, I'd write or make a. My parents think artists are. My God thinks artists are. What makes me feel weird about this recovery is pay extra attention to that because you'll find blocks that actually your ego will use to edge God out and keep you away from the growth that you're on the cusp of if you're willing to ask the question or hear the question and then respond to it with the answer that comes from the question being asked. Learning to trust myself is probably my most cheer me up music is my favorite way to dress is the last section before the tasks is growth. Growth is an erratic forward movement, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Remember that and be very gentle with yourself. A creative recovery is a healing process. You are capable of great things on Tuesday, but on Wednesday you may slide backward. This is normal. Growth occurs in spurts. You will lie dormant sometimes. Do not be discouraged. Think of it as resting. Very often, a week of insights will be followed by a week of sluggishness. The morning pages will seem pointless. They are not. What you are learning to do, writing them, even when you are tired and they seem dull, is to rest on the page. This is very important. Marathon runners suggest you log 10 slow miles for every fast one. The same holds true for creativity. In this sense, easy does it is actually a modus operandi. It means easy accomplishes it. If you will hew to a practice of writing 3 pages every morning and doing one kind thing for yourself every day, you will begin to notice a slight lightness of heart. Practice being kind to yourself in a small, concrete way. Look at your refrigerator. Are you feeding yourself nicely? Do you have socks? An extra set of sheets? What about a new houseplant? A thermos for a long drive to work? Allow yourself to pitch out some of your old ragged clothes. You don't have to keep everything. The expression God helps those who help themselves may take on a new and very different meaning. Where in the past it translated, God helps only those who earn help, it will now come to signify the amazing number of small free gifts the Creator showers on those who are willing to help themselves to a little bounty. If you do one nice thing a day for yourself, God will do 2 more. Be alert for support and encouragement from unexpected quarters. Be open to receiving gifts from odd channels, free tickets, a free trip, an offer to buy you dinner, a new to you old couch. Practice saying yes to such help. The scientifically inclined among you might want to make a good, thorough list of clothes you wish you had. Very often, the items on the list come into your possession at disconcerting speed. Just try it. Experiment.
More than anything else, experiment with solitude. You will need to make a commitment to quiet time.
Try to acquire the habit of checking in with yourself. Several times a day, just take a beat and ask yourself how you are feeling. Listen to your answer. Respond kindly. If you are doing something very hard, promise yourself a break and a treat afterward. Yes, I am asking you to baby yourself. We believe that to be artists, we must be tough, cynical, and intellectually chilly. Leave that to the critics. As a creative being, you will be more productive when coaxed than when bullied. Describe your childhood room. If you wish, you may sketch this room. What was your favorite thing about it? What's your favorite thing about your room right now? Nothing? Well, get something you like in there. Maybe something from that old childhood room. Describe 5 traits you like in yourself as a child. Number 3, list 5 childhood accomplishments. Straight A's in 7th grade, trained the dog, punched out the class bully, short-sheeted the priest's bed. And a treat. List 5 favorite childhood foods. Buy yourself one of them this week. Yes, Jellos with banana is okay. 4, habits. Take a look at your habits. Many of them may interfere with your self-nurturing and cause shame. Some of the oddest things are self-destructive. Do you have a habit of watching TV you don't like? Do you have a habit of hanging out with a really boring friend and just killing time? There's an expression. Some rotten habits are obvious, overt, drinking too much, smoking, eating instead of writing. List 3 obvious rotten habits. What's the payoff in continuing them? Some rotten habits are more subtle. No time to exercise, little time to pray, always helping others, not getting any self-nurturing, hanging out with people who belittle your dreams. List 3 of your subtle foes. What use do these forms of sabotage have? Be specific. 5, make a list of friends who nurture you. That's nurture. Give you a sense of your own competency and possibility, not enable. Give you a message that you will never get it straight without their help. There is a big difference between being helped and being treated as though you were helpless. List 3 nurturing friends. Which of their traits particularly serve you well? 6, call a friend who treats you like you are a really good and bright person who can accomplish things. Part of your recovery is reaching out for support. This support will be critical as you undertake new risks. Each of us has an inner compass. This is an instinct that points us toward help. It warns us when we are on dangerous ground, and it tells us when something is safe and good for us. Morning pages are one way to contact it. So are some other artist brain activities like painting, driving, walking, scrubbing, running. This week, take an hour to follow your inner compass by doing an artist brain activity and listening to what insights bubble up. 8, list 5 people you admire. Now list 5 people you secretly admire. What traits do these people have that you can cultivate further in yourself? 9, list 5 people you wish you had met who are dead. Now list 5 people who are dead whom you'd like to hang out with for a while in eternity. What traits do you find in these people that you can look for in your friends? 10, last one. Compare the 2 sets of lists. Take a look at what you really like and really admire, and a look at what you think you should like and admire. Your shoulds might tell you to admire Edison while your heart belongs to Houdini. Go with the Houdini side of you for a while. Check it. How many days this week did you do your morning pages? How was the experience for you? If you skipped a day, why did you skip it? 2, did you do your artist date this week? Yes, and it was awful. What did you do? How did it feel? 3, did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? 4, were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them.
And with that, we are finished reading the chapter on recovering our sense of power from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, read by yours truly, Laura J. Looking forward to moving with you through the week ahead. So please do leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this message, what it means to you, what it means for you, as always. And do share it with a friend who could use support in their creative recovery too. And move along to the replay. I apologize for the times when it was a bit more quiet, but live and learn. You do better as you go, and you don't judge yourself in the process, because I am but a mirror for you. Much love, Laura J. Namaste. Namago for today. Thank you.